The rain hammered against the hospital window with such force that Maya thought the glass might shatter. She sat in the plastic chair beside her daughter's bed, her hand wrapped around Zara's small fingers, and wondered if pain had a limit, if there was a point where the human heart simply couldn't hold any more grief. Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button. Let me take you back to this wonderful story. Zara was 9 years old. She had her father's dark eyes and Maya's stubborn chin. She loved drawing fantastical creatures in the margins of her homework and could recite every constellation in the night sky. 3 weeks ago, she had been laughing at the park, her braids flying behind her as she chased butterflies. Now she lay still beneath white sheets, her breathing shallow and mechanical, kept alive by machines that beeped in rhythms that Maya had learned to fear. The accident had happened so quickly. A drunk driver running a red light. A scream of brakes. The sickening crunch of metal. Maya had been at work when she got the call, and in that moment, her entire world had compressed into a single point of terror so acute it felt like dying. "Mrs. Campbell," the doctor said softly from the doorway. Dr. Patterson was a kind woman with grey streaking through her auburn hair. Maya had come to dread her gentle tone. "Can we speak outside for a moment?" Maya didn't want to leave Zara's side, but she forced herself to stand, her legs stiff from hours of sitting. In the hallway, under the harsh fluorescent lights, Dr. Patterson delivered the words Maya had been expecting but could never prepare for. "The swelling in her brain isn't responding to treatment. Her organs are beginning to fail. I'm so deeply sorry, but I think it's time to consider saying goodbye." Maya heard the words, but they seemed to come from very far away, as if she were underwater. She nodded mechanically, thanked the doctor for some reason she couldn't understand, and walked back into the room. She sat down, picked up Zara's hand again, and began to tell her daughter stories about all the places they would never visit together, all the moments they would never share. Zara died at 4:47 in the morning, just as the sun was beginning to paint the horizon pink and gold. Maya held her as she went, whispering, "I love you" over and over, as if the words could build a bridge to wherever her daughter was going. The weeks that followed were a blur of casseroles from neighbors Maya barely knew, hushed conversations she wasn't meant to overhear, and a silence in her home so profound it felt like a physical presence. Her husband David had left 6 months before the accident, unable to cope with his own demons, his own addictions. Now Maya was alone in a 3-bedroom house that echoed with absence. She went through the motions. She returned to her job as a social worker, sat through meetings, filed reports, said the right things at the right times. But inside, she was hollowed out, a shell of a person pretending to be whole. At night, she would stand in the doorway of Zara's room, untouched since that terrible day, and feel the weight of her grief pressing down on her chest until she couldn't breathe. 3 months after Zara's death, Maya attended a support group for grieving parents. She sat in a circle of folding chairs in a church basement, surrounded by people whose eyes held the same haunted look as hers. They each told their stories: car accidents, cancer, sudden infant death syndrome, drownings, murders. The catalogue of human suffering seemed endless. A man named Richard, whose teenage son had died by suicide, said something that struck Maya like lightning. "I keep thinking that if I had just paid more attention, if I had just been there more, I could have saved him. And now all that love I have for him has nowhere to go. It just sits inside me, rotting." Maya understood. She carried an ocean of love for Zara with nowhere to pour it. It was drowning her from the inside. That night, unable to sleep, Maya sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea growing cold in her hands. On the table was a folder from work, a case file for a 15-year-old girl named Jennifer who had run away from her 4th foster home in 2 years. Maya knew the statistics by heart. Kids who aged out of foster care without stable placements were exponentially more likely to experience homelessness, incarceration, exploitation. They fell through the cracks of a system that was supposed to protect them. She thought about Zara, about all that love with nowhere to go. She thought about Jennifer and the thousands of other children like her who desperately needed someone to care. And in that moment, sitting in her kitchen at 2 in the morning, an idea began to form. Fragile and tentative, but there. What if she could take all this pain, all this love, and transform it into something that mattered? What if her grief could become a foundation instead of a grave? The next morning, Maya made a phone call that would change everything. She reached out to her supervisor, Maria, a woman who had worked in child welfare for 30 years and had seen everything twice. "Maria, I want to become a foster parent." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Maya, honey, are you sure? It hasn't been that long since." "I'm sure," Maya interrupted, her voice steadier than she felt. "I know what you're going to say. That I'm still grieving, that I need more time. But all I have is time, Maria. Time and an empty house and more love than I know what to do with. These kids need homes. I have a home." Maria sighed, but Maya could hear the understanding in it. "All right. But you're going to have to go through all the proper channels, the training, the home studies. Being a caseworker doesn't exempt you from the process." "I know. I wouldn't want it to." The process was grueling. Maya attended 12 weeks of training classes where she learned about trauma, attachment disorders, and the complex needs of children in the foster care system. She had social workers inspect every corner of her home, asking questions about her parenting philosophy, her support system, her mental health. She was fingerprinted, background checked, and interviewed until she felt scraped raw. During one particularly difficult session, a trainer named Paul, who had been a foster parent for 15 years, asked the group a question that made Maya's breath catch. "Why do you want to do this? And I want you to be honest, because these kids will smell a savior complex a mile away." Maya thought about it for a long moment before answering. "My daughter died," she said quietly, and the room went still. "And I have all this love that I was supposed to give her for the next 50 years. I know I can't replace her. I know these kids aren't substitutes. But I also know what it feels like to have no safe place to land, no one who sees you, no one who stays. My parents were immigrants who worked 3 jobs and barely spoke English. I was alone a lot. I turned out okay, but I remember that loneliness. If I can give even one kid a place where they feel seen and safe, then maybe all this pain means something." Paul nodded slowly. "That's honest. That's good. But you need to understand something. These kids are going to test you. They're going to push every boundary, reject your love, maybe even hate you for a while. Because in their experience, adults leave. Adults hurt. Adults can't be trusted. Your grief is real, but so is theirs. Can you hold space for both?" "I have to try," Maya said simply. 6 months after that first phone call, Maya received her foster care license. A week later, she got a call about a 12-year-old boy named Marcus. Marcus had been in 7 different placements in 3 years. His file was thick with reports of behavioral issues, fighting, running away, property destruction. His mother was incarcerated for drug-related offenses. His father was unknown. He had been removed from his grandmother's care after she suffered a stroke and could no longer manage his needs. "He's difficult," the placement coordinator told Maya bluntly. "I want to be upfront about that. His last foster parents said they couldn't handle him anymore. But there's something about him, this intelligence, this spark. He just needs someone who won't give up." "Tell me when you can bring him," Maya said. Marcus arrived on a Tuesday afternoon with everything he owned in a black garbage bag. He was tall for his age, with guarded eyes and a jaw set in permanent defiance. He stood in Maya's doorway looking like he was ready to bolt at any second. "Hi, Marcus. I'm Maya. Come on in." He didn't move. "This is temporary, right?" "That's what they all say. Temporary. Like that makes it better." Maya looked at him steadily. "I don't know what's temporary and what's not. What I know is that for right now, this is your home. You have a room, you have food, you have someone who's going to show up every single day. Beyond that, I can't make promises about the future. None of us can. But I can promise I won't lie to you." Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, maybe, or the tiniest crack in his armor. He picked up his garbage bag and walked inside. The first weeks were exactly as hard as Paul had warned they would be. Marcus tested every boundary Maya set. He came home past curfew, refused to do homework, left the kitchen a disaster after making food. He was waiting for her to give up, to confirm what he already believed about himself, that he was too broken, too much trouble, not worth the effort. Maya didn't give up. When he came home late, she waited up, not with anger but with relief that he was safe. When he failed a test because he hadn't studied, she sat with him at the kitchen table and helped him prepare for the retake. When he shouted that he hated her and wished he'd never come here, she said quietly, "I'm sorry you're feeling that way. I'm still going to be here tomorrow." Slowly, incrementally, things began to shift. Marcus started coming home on time. His grades improved. He even smiled once or twice, though he tried to hide it. 3 months in, Maya came home from work to find that he had cleaned the entire kitchen without being asked. When she thanked him, he shrugged and said, "Whatever. It was messy." But that night, she heard him on the phone with a friend from school, and he said, "Yeah, I'm staying with my foster mom Maya. She's actually pretty cool." My foster mom Maya. The words made her eyes burn with tears. She blinked away quickly. As Marcus settled in, Maya began to see the person beneath the armor. He was brilliant, particularly in math and science. He loved basketball and could spend hours shooting hoops in the driveway. He was fiercely protective of younger kids, always the first to step in if he saw someone being bullied. He carried his trauma like a heavy coat he couldn't take off, but underneath it was a boy who just wanted to belong somewhere. One evening, about 6 months after Marcus had moved in, they were sitting together watching a movie when he said, out of nowhere, "Why are you doing this?" Maya paused the movie. "Doing what?" "This. Taking care of me. You don't have to. You could have a normal life without some messed up kid complicating everything." Maya turned to look at him fully. "You want the truth?" He nodded, his expression wary. "I had a daughter. Her name was Zara. She died in a car accident about a year before you came here." Maya's voice was steady, though speaking about Zara still felt like swallowing glass. "After she died, I felt like I was drowning. All this love I had for her had nowhere to go. And I realized I had a choice. I could let that love die with her, or I could find a way to give it to someone who needed it. So I'm like a replacement." Marcus's voice was sharp, defensive. "No," Maya said firmly. "You're not a replacement. Nobody could replace Zara, and I'm not trying to. But you're someone who deserves love, who deserves a home, who deserves someone who shows up. And I'm someone who has love to give. That's not about replacing anyone. It's about refusing to let loss be the end of the story." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, so softly Maya almost didn't hear it, "I'm sorry about your daughter." "Thank you. And I'm sorry about everything you've been through. He nodded, and they turned the movie back on. But something had shifted between them, a deeper understanding, a fragile trust. Around this time, Maya started noticing something troubling at work. There was a consistent pattern with older foster youth, particularly teenagers who had been in the system for years. Many of them were in placements that weren't equipped to handle their needs, homes that wanted younger children, or foster parents who were overwhelmed, or group facilities that were more institutional than familial. These kids bounced from place to place, never staying anywhere long enough to form real connections, never feeling truly safe. She thought about Marcus, about how close he had come to falling through those same cracks. She thought about what would have happened if she hadn't been able to take him in. The thought kept her up at night. One day, during a particularly frustrating case conference about a 16-year-old girl who was about to age out of the system with nowhere to go, Maya spoke up. "This isn't working. We all know it. We move these kids around like chess pieces, and we act surprised when they don't trust us, when they end up on the streets or worse. They need more than temporary placements. They need a community. They need a place that feels like home, where they can stay until they're ready to launch into adulthood." Her colleague James, a veteran caseworker with perpetual bags under his eyes, let out a bitter laugh. "Sure, Maya. And where exactly is this magical place going to come from? We can barely find enough regular foster homes." "Then we build it," Maya said, the idea crystallizing even as she spoke. "We create a place specifically designed for older youth who've been failed by the system. Not a group home, not an institution, an actual home. Or homes. A community where they can stay long-term, where they have support and structure and people who aren't going to disappear from their lives." Maria, who had been listening quietly, leaned forward. "You're talking about something big, Maya. That would require funding, resources, property, staff. It would be a massive undertaking." "I know," Maya said. "But what's the alternative? We keep doing what we're doing, and we keep losing these kids." The room was silent. Then Maria said slowly, "If you're serious about this, I might know some people who could help. But you'd need a plan. A real, concrete plan." That night, Maya sat at her kitchen table with a blank notebook and began to write. She wrote about what these kids needed, not just food and shelter, but therapy, education support, life skills training, mentorship, and most importantly, relationships that wouldn't disappear when they turned 18. She wrote about wraparound services, about partnerships with schools and mental health providers, about creating a community where young people could heal and grow. Marcus came downstairs around midnight to get water and found her still writing. "What are you doing?" Maya looked up, her eyes tired but bright with purpose. "I'm trying to figure out how to build something that should have existed a long time ago." She explained her vision, a residential program specifically for older foster youth, teenagers who had nowhere else to go, who needed more than the system was currently providing. Marcus listened, then said something that surprised her. "You should let them have a say in how it works. The kids, I mean. Everyone always decides stuff for us, like we don't know what we need. But we know. We know better than anyone." Maya stared at him, then smiled slowly. "You're absolutely right. Will you help me?" "Help you how? Tell me what you would have needed. What would have made a difference for you? What would make a place feel like home instead of just another placement?" Marcus pulled out a chair and sat down. They talked until 3 in the morning, and Maya filled pages with his insights, things she never would have thought of because she hadn't lived it. The importance of having your own space but not feeling isolated. The need for consistency, for people who kept their promises. The value of being treated like you had something to offer, not just problems to fix. Over the next 6 months, Maya became a woman possessed by purpose. She worked her regular job during the day and spent every evening and weekend on her vision. She wrote grant proposals, researched non-profit development, met with community leaders, and talked to anyone who would listen about her idea. She called it The Haven, a place where young people could find safety, support, and a path forward. The journey was far from easy. Doors closed in her face constantly. Potential donors were skeptical. Zoning boards were concerned. Some people questioned whether someone still grieving her own daughter should be taking on such an enormous project. But Maya had learned something from her grief. Pain could either destroy you or forge you into something stronger. She chose strength. She found an ally in Reverend Thompson, who led a large church in the community and had been advocating for foster youth for years. He helped her navigate the non-profit registration process and connected her with people who could help. She found another ally in Dr. Patricia Chen, a therapist who specialized in trauma and who believed passionately in Maya's vision. Slowly, piece by piece, the foundation began to take shape. Maya registered the Haven as a 501c3 non-profit. She assembled a board of directors that included former foster youth, mental health professionals, educators, and community leaders. She wrote a comprehensive program model that addressed not just housing but holistic support. The biggest challenge was funding. Everything required money: property, renovations, staff, programming. Maya applied for grants from foundations, corporations, and government programs. She was rejected more times than she could count. But she kept going, refining her proposals, learning from each rejection, trying again. Marcus watched all of this with something like awe. He saw Maya come home exhausted night after night, saw her face setbacks that would have made most people quit, and saw her get up the next morning and keep fighting. It taught him something profound about resilience, about what it meant to turn pain into purpose. One night, after Maya had received yet another rejection letter, Marcus found her sitting on the back porch, her shoulders slumped in exhaustion and disappointment. "You're not giving up, are you?" he asked, sitting down beside her. "I don't know," Maya admitted. "I believe in this so much, Marcus. But maybe I'm being naive. Maybe it's too big, too complicated." "You told me once that you wouldn't give up on me," Marcus said quietly. "Even when I was making everything hard. You said you'd show up every day. Were you lying?" "Of course not." "Then don't give up on this either. Because there are kids out there right now who need this place. Kids like me, or worse off than me. If you give up, they don't get a chance." Maya looked at this boy who had come to her angry and guarded and who had slowly, carefully, allowed her into his heart. He was right. She couldn't give up. "Okay," she said. "We keep going." The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Eleanor Whitmore was a 92-year-old widow who had made her fortune in real estate decades ago. She had no children of her own and had been quietly donating to various causes throughout her life. She read about Maya's vision in a local newspaper article and invited Maya to tea at her gracious home. "Tell me why you're doing this," Mrs. Whitmore said, her eyes sharp despite her age. Maya told her everything, about Zara, about Marcus, about all the children she'd seen in her years as a social worker who deserved so much more than they were getting. She talked about her vision for the Haven, about creating not just a place to live but a community of healing. When she finished, Mrs. Whitmore was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I have a property. 5 acres on the edge of town with a large house and several outbuildings. I had planned to leave it to a charity in my will, but I like you, Maya Campbell. I like your fire. I'm going to give it to your organization now, so I can watch you put it to good use." Maya felt her heart stop. Mrs. Whitmore, I don't know what to say. Say you'll make it everything you've promised. Say you'll help children who need help. That's all I want to hear. I promise, Maya said, tears streaming down her face. I promise I will. With property secured, everything accelerated. Maya's grant proposals suddenly looked much more viable, and funding began to trickle in. She was able to hire an architect to design modifications to the main house and outbuildings. She recruited staff, social workers, counselors, a program director, a nurse, residential support workers. Marcus, now 15 and thriving, became an unofficial consultant, reviewing plans and offering insights from a youth perspective. He helped design the bedrooms so they felt personal rather than institutional. He suggested adding a recording studio in one of the outbuildings because music had been his own outlet when things got hard. His input was invaluable. 18 months after that first night of frantic planning at a kitchen table, the Haven officially opened its doors. The main house was beautiful. It had been lovingly restored, with bedrooms that felt like actual bedrooms, not cells. The common areas were warm and inviting, with comfortable furniture, art on the walls, and big windows that let in natural light. The kitchen was large enough for residents to learn cooking skills. There was a library, a computer lab, a therapy room, and a recreation space. The outbuildings had been converted into a vocational training center, the recording studio Marcus had advocated for, and a small greenhouse for those interested in gardening. Every detail had been thoughtfully designed with input from young people who understood what made a space feel safe versus institutional. The Haven could house 12 residents, ages 15 to 21, and provide wraparound services including therapy, education support, life skills training, job readiness programs, and ongoing mentorship even after they transitioned to independence. Maya's vision had been to create a place where young people could stay as long as they needed, where they wouldn't be pushed out at 18 but could launch into adulthood when they were truly ready, with a community they could return to whenever they needed support. The first resident was a 17-year-old girl named Jasmine. She had been trafficked by her boyfriend when she was 15 and had spent the last 2 years in a series of placements that didn't understand her trauma. She arrived at the Haven thin and wary, flinching when anyone moved too quickly. Maya met her at the door. "Welcome home, Jasmine." Jasmine looked around suspiciously. "This is mine. Like my own room. Completely yours. We can decorate it however you want. There are some basic things in there now, but we can change anything you don't like." Over the next weeks, more young people arrived. There was Kevin, 16, who had been bouncing between group homes since his mother's parental rights were terminated when he was 7. There was twins Maria and Sophia, 15, who had been separated in different foster homes and were reunited at the Haven. There was Terrell, 18, who had aged out of the system 3 months prior and had been sleeping on friends' couches, terrified of homelessness. Each of them came with their own pain, their own trauma, their own stories of loss and abandonment. And each of them slowly, carefully, began to heal. The staff at the Haven didn't just provide services, they built relationships. They showed up consistently, kept their promises, and created an environment where young people felt safe enough to be vulnerable. Dr. Chen provided trauma-informed therapy, working with each resident to process their experiences and develop healthy coping strategies. Maya lived on-site in a small apartment attached to the main house. She wanted to be present, to be someone the residents could count on seeing every day. Marcus, who was now in his junior year of high school and thriving academically, spent most of his time at the Haven too. He had become a powerful mentor to the younger residents, someone who understood their pain because he'd lived it. One evening, about 3 months after the Haven opened, Maya found Jasmine sitting on the porch steps, watching the sunset. She sat down beside her. "How are you doing?" Jasmine was quiet for a moment. "I keep waiting for something bad to happen. Like this can't be real, you know? People don't just help you for no reason. There's always a catch." "There's no catch, Jasmine. You deserve a safe place. That's not charity, it's justice. It's what should have been available to you all along." "Why do you care so much?" Jasmine asked. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." Maya considered how much to share. Then she said, "I had a daughter who died. And when she died, I had to figure out what to do with all this love I still had for her. I realized I could let it die with her, or I could give it to young people who needed it. You, Kevin, Maria, Sophia, Terrell, Marcus, you're not replacements for her. But you're people who deserve love and support, and I have love and support to give. It's as simple and as complicated as that." Jasmine wiped at her eyes. "That's the saddest and most beautiful thing I've ever heard." They sat together in comfortable silence as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. As the haven found its rhythm, something remarkable began to happen. The young people living there started to flourish in ways that surprised even Maya. Kevin, who had been written off by multiple schools as a troublemaker, discovered a passion for carpentry in the vocational training program and began creating beautiful furniture. Maria and Sophia, who had been separated for so long, helped each other heal, and both decided they wanted to become social workers to help other kids in foster care. Terrell, who had arrived terrified and defeated, began working with a job counselor at the Haven and landed an apprenticeship with a local electrician. He was also taking classes at the community college and dreaming of starting his own business someday. Jasmine, whose trauma had been so severe that many people had thought she would never recover, slowly began to trust again. She started writing poetry in the Haven's library, pouring her pain and healing onto the page. Dr. Chen helped her process her experiences, and gradually, Jasmine began to believe that what happened to her didn't define her. Marcus, now a senior in high school with a full scholarship to a state university, became the heart of the Haven in many ways. He organized basketball tournaments, helped younger residents with homework, and was often the one who could reach someone when they were struggling because he'd been there himself. The success of the Haven began to attract attention. Local media ran stories about the program. Other non-profits asked to learn from Maya's model. She began getting calls from social workers in other cities asking how they could replicate what she had built. But Maya never lost sight of why she was doing this. It wasn't about recognition or acclaim, it was about the young people. Every time she saw one of them laugh freely, or trust someone with their pain, or dream about their future, she felt a piece of her own broken heart mend. One day, about a year after the Haven opened, Maya received an email that made her cry. It was from Jennifer, the 15-year-old runaway whose case file had been on Maya's table that terrible night when she'd first conceived of the Haven. Jennifer had been connected with the program 6 months ago and was now thriving. The email read, "Dear Maya, I just wanted to say thank you. Before I came here I thought I was broken, that there was something wrong with me that made people not want me. But everyone here keeps showing me that's not true. You keep showing me that. I'm starting to believe that maybe I deserve good things. Maybe I can have a future. That's because of you and this place. Thank you for not giving up on kids like me. Love, Jennifer." Maya sat at her desk and let herself cry, not from sadness this time, but from the overwhelming sense that maybe, just maybe, she was doing what she was meant to do. Maybe all that pain had a purpose after all. Of course, it wasn't all success stories and heartwarming moments. Running the Haven came with enormous challenges. There were funding struggles, staff turnover, regulatory compliance issues, and the constant emotional toll of working with deeply traumatized young people. Some residents struggled more than others. A 16-year-old boy named Deshaun ran away 3 times in his first 2 months at the Haven, convinced that he didn't deserve anything good. Each time, Maya and her staff brought him back, assured him he had a place there, and kept working with him. A 17-year-old girl named Aisha had such severe attachment trauma that she lashed out violently whenever anyone tried to get close to her, terrified of being hurt again. It took months of patient, consistent work from Dr. Chen and the entire staff before Aisha began to soften. There were nights when Maya lay awake wondering if she was equipped for this, if she was doing enough, if she was the right person to lead this work. The weight of responsibility was crushing sometimes. These were real young people with real pain, and their futures depended in part on the decisions she made. During one particularly difficult period, when funding was tight and 2 staff members had quit because of burnout, Maya seriously considered giving up. She was exhausted, depleted, running on fumes. She sat in her office late one night, head in her hands, wondering if she had made a terrible mistake. There was a soft knock on her door. It was Marcus, now 18 and about to start college in a few weeks, but still spending his summer at the Haven. "You okay?" he asked. "Honestly, no. I'm tired, Marcus. I'm so tired." He came in and sat down across from her. "You know what I think about sometimes? That night I came here with all my stuff in a garbage bag, ready to hate you, ready to prove that you'd give up on me like everyone else. And you didn't. Even when I made it really hard, you didn't. That was different. Why? Because it was just me? Maya, you've helped 12 kids this year. 12 kids who might not have made it otherwise. That's 12 lives that are different because you refuse to give up. How is that not enough? What if I can't sustain it? What if we run out of money, or I burn out, or…" "Then you'll figure it out," Marcus said firmly. "Because that's what you do. You fall down, and you get back up, and you keep going. You taught me that." Maya looked at this young man who had arrived so broken and was now so strong, preparing to go out into the world with purpose and hope. He was right. She had taught him that. And he was teaching it right back to her. "Thank you," she said softly. "You're welcome. Now go home and sleep. Tomorrow we have that big donor meeting, and you need to be sharp so you can charm them into giving us lots of money." Maya laughed despite herself. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best," he said with a grin. The next day's donor meeting went well. A local foundation agreed to provide funding for the next 2 years, giving the Haven the stability it desperately needed. Maya hired 2 new staff members, both former foster youth themselves who brought invaluable perspective to the work. Slowly, things stabilized. The Haven found its rhythm, its community, its place in the larger ecosystem of child welfare services. 2 years after the Haven opened, Maya received a call from Mrs. Whitmore's attorney. The elderly woman had passed away in her sleep, peacefully and surrounded by photos of the Haven residents she had come to know and love. In her will, she had left a substantial endowment to the Haven, enough to ensure its operation for decades to come and to expand the program. Maya stood at Mrs. Whitmore's funeral, surrounded by Haven residents who had wanted to pay their respects to the woman who had given them a home. She thought about the ripple effects of kindness, how one person's generosity could change so many lives. With the new funding, Maya was able to expand. She opened a second Haven house, this one focused specifically on young mothers in foster care who needed support raising their children while getting their own lives on track. She hired more staff, expanded programming, and began offering services to youth who had aged out of foster care years ago but still needed support. The Haven became a model program, studied by researchers and replicated in other communities. Maya was invited to speak at conferences, to consult with government agencies, to share her story and her vision. She was recognized with awards and accolades. But none of that mattered as much as the moments that happened quietly, without fanfare. Like the day Kevin finished his first commissioned furniture piece and stood back with tears in his eyes, proud of what he had created. Like the day Jasmine got her first poem published in a literary magazine and showed everyone at the Haven, beaming. Like the day Maria and Sophia got accepted to the same social work program at a nearby university, their dreams of helping other kids coming true. Like the day Aisha, who had been so violent and closed off when she arrived, let Dr. Chen hug her for the first time and whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." Marcus graduated from college with honors and immediately returned to the Haven as a full-time youth mentor. He had experienced homelessness, instability, and trauma, and now he was helping other young people navigate the same challenges. The cycle had been broken. One evening, Maya stood on the porch of the main Haven house, watching residents play basketball in the driveway, their laughter carrying on the warm summer air. She thought about Zara, as she did every single day. The grief was still there. It probably always would be. But it had transformed into something else, something that coexisted with joy and purpose. She had learned that pain and beauty could exist simultaneously, that the worst thing that ever happened to you didn't have to define your entire life. She had learned that love didn't diminish when you shared it, it multiplied. "Maya," Jasmine called out. "Come play. We need one more person for teams." Maya smiled and walked toward them, toward this life she had built from the ashes of her greatest loss. 5 years after the Haven opened, it had grown into something even bigger than Maya had imagined. There were now 3 Haven houses serving 36 young people at any given time. The program had a 98% success rate, meaning that 98% of Haven residents completed high school, avoided incarceration, and successfully transitioned to stable adulthood. This was compared to the dismal statistics for foster youth nationally, where the majority struggled with homelessness, unemployment, and incarceration. But numbers didn't capture the whole story. The real story was in the lives that had been transformed, the cycles that had been broken, the futures that had been reclaimed. Maya hired former Haven residents to work at the program whenever possible, creating a community where young people who had been helped could grow up to help others. Kevin ran the vocational training program. Jasmine taught poetry workshops and worked as a peer counselor. Maria and Sophia, fresh out of graduate school, joined the clinical team. The Haven wasn't just changing individual lives, it was changing the entire community's understanding of what was possible for foster youth. Maya worked closely with the county child welfare system, advocating for policy changes, training caseworkers, and pushing for better resources for older youth. She became a fierce advocate, testifying before the state legislature about the need for extended foster care services, fighting for increased funding, demanding that the system treat young people with the dignity and support they deserved. When she spoke, people listened, because she spoke with the authority of someone who had done the work, who had the results to back up her vision. One particularly memorable day, Maya was invited to speak at a national conference on child welfare. She stood at the podium looking out at hundreds of social workers, policymakers, and advocates, and she told them Zara's story. She told them about the night she sat at her kitchen table, drowning in grief, and decided to build something beautiful from her pain. "We talk about foster care as a system," she said, her voice strong and clear. "But systems don't raise children, people do. And we've created a system that moves children around like commodities, that gives up on them when they're challenging, that abandons them the moment they turn 18. We can do better. We must do better." She talked about the Haven, about the young people who had flourished when given stability, support, and unconditional commitment. She talked about the importance of listening to youth voice, of trauma-informed care, of staying power. Every single one of these young people deserves what every child deserves. To be seen, to be valued, to have someone in their corner who won't give up. If we can provide that, not as a favor but as a right, we can change outcomes. We can change lives. I know because I've seen it happen. The standing ovation lasted for several minutes. But more importantly, dozens of people approached her afterward wanting to learn how to create similar programs in their communities. The ripples were spreading. 7 years after that terrible night when Zara died, Maya stood in the Haven's garden on a beautiful spring morning. She was older now, with silver threading through her dark hair and lines etched around her eyes from years of hard work and harder tears. But there was a lightness about her too, a sense of peace that had been hard-won. She was preparing for a special event. The Haven was hosting its first alumni reunion. Young people who had graduated from the program were coming back to celebrate, to reconnect, to show current residents what was possible. Marcus arrived early to help set up. He was 24 now, with a master's degree in social work and a job at a non-profit serving homeless youth. He was engaged to a wonderful woman named Tosha who he'd met in college. He was healthy, happy and whole, or as whole as anyone who'd been through what he'd been through could be. Hard to believe it's been 7 years, he said, standing beside Maya. Sometimes it feels like yesterday. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime ago. You know what I think about sometimes? Marcus said. What would have happened to me if you hadn't decided to become a foster parent? If you'd let your grief swallow you instead of transforming it into this? Maya turned to look at him. You would have found your way. You're strong, Marcus. Maybe. But it would have been a lot harder. And some of the other kids, Kevin, Jasmine, Jennifer, I don't know if they would have made it without this place. Throughout the day, former residents arrived. There was Kevin, now running his own carpentry business and engaged to be married. Jasmine, who had published a book of poetry and was working on her second. Maria and Sophia, both working as social workers and making a difference in the lives of foster children. Jennifer, now in nursing school and dreaming of becoming a pediatric nurse. There was Deshawn, who had run away so many times but had finally stayed, graduated high school, and was now working as a youth mentor himself. Aisha, who had been so angry and violent when she arrived, now working as an advocate for survivors of trauma and dating someone who treated her with the gentleness she'd never known. Terrell, who had arrived homeless and hopeless, now owned his own electrical contracting business and employed 3 other former foster youth, giving them the same chance he'd been given. Each of them had a story. Each of them had struggled. But each of them was making it. Not just surviving but thriving, building lives of meaning and purpose. As the sun began to set, everyone gathered in the garden for a ceremony. The current Haven residents had planted a tree, a Japanese maple with delicate leaves that turned brilliant red in the fall. At the base of the tree, they placed a plaque that read, "In memory of Zara Campbell, whose light continues to shine through the Haven. May we always remember that love is stronger than loss." Maya's eyes filled with tears as she read the words. Beside her, Marcus took her hand. "She would be proud of you," he said softly. "Of all of this." Maya nodded, unable to speak. She thought about Zara, her beautiful, brilliant daughter who had loved constellations and fantastical creatures and chasing butterflies. Zara who would never grow up, never graduate, never fall in love or have children of her own. The grief was still there. It always would be. But it was accompanied by something else now, a sense of purpose, of meaning, of light emerging from darkness. The work never stopped. As the Haven entered its 8th year, Maya and her team continued to face challenges and celebrate victories. They expanded again, opening a transitional housing program for young adults ages 18 to 25 who needed ongoing support as they navigated college, work, and independence. They started a mentorship program that connected current residents with successful adults in the community who committed to long-term relationships. They began offering family reunification services for young people whose circumstances had changed and who could safely return to relatives with proper support. Maya trained other organizations across the country on the Haven model, helping them create similar programs in their communities. She wrote a book about her journey that became required reading in social work programs nationwide. She received recognition from the president for her work in child welfare. But she never forgot where it all started, with a mother's grief, with love that had nowhere to go, with a choice to transform pain into purpose. One particularly meaningful day, a young woman named Crystal arrived at the Haven. She was 17, had been in foster care since she was 8, and was pregnant. She was terrified, convinced she was going to fail her baby the way she felt failed by the adults in her own life. Maya sat with her in the quiet of the Haven's library and said, "You being here, seeking help, fighting for your child, that's not failure. That's love. And we're going to help you. You and your baby are going to have everything you need." Crystal began to cry. "Why do you care about me? You don't even know me." Maya smiled gently. "I care because you deserve to be cared about. Your baby deserves to be cared about. And I have the capacity to help, so I'm going to. It's that simple." Over the following months, Maya and her team supported Crystal through her pregnancy, helped her finish high school, prepared her for motherhood, and surrounded her with the resources and love she needed. When Crystal's daughter, Hope, was born, the Haven threw a baby shower. The entire community celebrated this new life, this new beginning. Maya held baby Hope and thought about the cycles, how pain could echo through generations, but how love could too. How the choice to show up, to care, to stay could change the trajectory of a life. How one person's decision to transform their grief could create ripples that touched hundreds, thousands of lives. The Haven wasn't a fairy tale. It didn't solve everything. Some residents still struggled. Some left the program before they were ready. Some faced challenges that even the best support couldn't entirely overcome. Maya had learned that you couldn't save everyone, and that was a painful truth to carry. But she had also learned that trying mattered. That showing up mattered. That creating spaces of safety and love and possibility mattered immensely. 10 years after Zara's death, Maya visited her daughter's grave on a crisp autumn morning. She brought flowers, sunflowers, which had been Zara's favorite. She sat on the grass beside the headstone and talked to her daughter the way she always did, telling her about the Haven, about the young people whose lives had been changed, about the good that had emerged from the worst pain Maya had ever known. "I miss you every single day," Maya said softly. "There's not a moment when I don't wish you were here, when I wouldn't trade everything to have you back. But since I can't have that, I've tried to make your life matter. I've tried to make sure that the love I have for you didn't die with you." She sat in silence for a while, feeling the warm sun on her face, listening to the birds singing in the trees. Then she stood, kissed her fingers, and pressed them to Zara's name etched in stone. "Thank you for making me a mother," she whispered. "Thank you for teaching me how to love that big. I'm using it well. I promise." As she walked back to her car, her phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. "Just got the job. I'm going to be a counselor at a youth shelter. Wish me luck. And thank you for showing me I could do this." Maya smiled, tears slipping down her cheeks, tears of grief and joy mixed together, inseparable. She texted back, "You don't need luck. You've got everything you need already. So proud of you." That evening, back at the Haven, Maya found herself in the common room surrounded by residents doing homework, playing games, arguing about what to watch on TV, all the beautiful mundane moments of family life. Marcus stopped by with Tosha to show off their new apartment. Kevin brought by a rocking chair he'd made for Crystal's baby. Dr. Chen stayed late to work with a new resident who was struggling. This was the truth of it. The haven wasn't perfect. The work was hard. The funding was always a challenge. The emotional toll was real. But it was also filled with moments of profound beauty, with young people learning to trust again, with laughter echoing through rooms that had once seemed too empty to fill. Maya had learned that healing wasn't linear. That grief and joy could coexist. That the worst thing that ever happened to you could become the catalyst for the best thing you ever did. That love, real, committed, unconditional love, could change everything. She had learned that you couldn't save everyone, but you could show up for the ones in front of you. That sometimes the most powerful thing you could do was simply refuse to give up on someone. That staying power was its own kind of magic. Most importantly, she had learned that pain didn't have to be the end of the story. It could be the beginning of something beautiful, if you were brave enough to transform it, to let it break you open rather than break you down, to choose again and again to build something meaningful from the wreckage. As Maya locked up the main house that night, checking in on each resident, making sure everyone was safe and settled, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. From that hospital room where she'd held Zara as she died, to the empty house that had echoed with grief, to this place, this haven, filled with young people who were learning that they were worthy of love, worthy of support, worthy of a future. She thought about how she'd been given a choice in her darkest moment. Let the grief destroy her, or transform it into something that mattered. She'd chosen transformation. And that choice had saved her life, even as it had changed so many others. The haven was more than a building, more than a program. It was a testament to what was possible when you refused to let pain have the final word. It was proof that love was stronger than loss, that hope could emerge from the deepest darkness, that broken things could be made beautiful again. Maya turned off the lights and stepped out into the night. Above her, stars scattered across the black canvas of sky, constellations that Zara had once taught her to name. She looked up at them and smiled. "I'm doing it, baby girl," she whispered to the stars, to her daughter, to the universe. "I'm turning our pain into something that matters. And I'm never going to stop." Then she walked to her car, drove home through the quiet streets, and prepared to do it all again tomorrow. Because that was the work. Showing up, staying present, refusing to give up, transforming pain into purpose one day at a time, one young person at a time, one choice at a time. The haven stood behind her in the darkness, its windows glowing with warm light, a beacon for the broken, a sanctuary for the lost, a home for those who had never had one. It was built on grief, sustained by love, and fueled by the unwavering belief that every young person deserved someone who would stay. And Maya Campbell, the woman who had turned her pain into a safe haven, would make sure it endured. Not just for a year or a decade, but for generations. Because that was the other thing she'd learned. Healing wasn't just about the present. It was about changing the future, breaking cycles, creating legacies of love that would outlive all of them. Zara's light continued to shine. And in that light, countless others were learning to find their way home. In memory of all the children lost too soon, and in honor of all those who transformed their grief into grace, their pain into purpose, their loss into love. May we all find the courage to build something beautiful from our broken places. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.